And welcome back to my channel. Or just welcome if you're new here. My name is Rusty, and this is C. Mageddon. And we are here on day 3 of Shark Week to talk about Deep Blue Sea 3. Yes. Now, Deep Blue Sea 3 was released in 2020, and it was directed by John Pogue. It was written by Dirk Blackman, and it stars Tania Raymonde, Nathaniel Buzolic, and Emerson Brooks. I like that third name better. It was easier to say. So, yeah. Now, Deep Blue Sea is a direct sequel to Deep Blue Sea 2. Or Deep Blue Sea 3 is a direct sequel to Deep Blue Sea 2. There's antihistamines. It's quite humorous. This movie opens with 3 bull shark fins. Remember I told you in the last movie that that's how it ended, was those 3 fins. So obviously 3 babies got away from that facility. These 3 bull shark fins are swimming through the water, and we are then introduced to Emma. Emma is our main lead in this movie. She is on an abandoned atoll village that discussing climate change for a vlog about how rising sea levels have caused this atoll to become abandoned with I think she said there was like 150 people living on it. Now there was only 2 because rising sea level. I mean, the thing is going to, so you get a little talk about climate change when she says stuff like, this is what Houston's going to look like. It's what Key West is going to look like. It's going to, and so, and that is true, So we see, her in this village talking about that. The village is called Little Happy, was the name of it. And we see her swimming with a guy named Shaw, who is like part of her research team. They study climate change on oceans, or what climate change is actually doing to the oceans. Because it's not just that it's going to hurt land. It also affects the ocean and the species in it for more gamma rays to come into the larger body of water, for the levels to rise, which means what was deep is now deeper. There's effects to the ocean as well because of climate change, and not just on the land. So we are then introduced to Richard. Now Richard is chasing those 3 sharks. From part 2. He has found the mom and knows that she was tracking her babies, that she was taking her babies somewhere, and he knows exactly where they're going because he knows about this atoll. The only reason that this atoll was turned into an island was because it has a huge giant feeding trough under there, and it's where the sharks come to mate, have babies, and feed their babies. So he knows that that's where they were heading because prior to them catching her, she got killed in a fishing net, and they had tracked her beacon, and so she knew that that's where they were heading, so that's where he goes. So as that's going on, she was taking the babies to this atoll to feed them. And that's when we're introduced to the rest of Emma's team, which is Maya and Spinnaker. Never heard of anyone named Spinnaker, but that's kind of cool. So, what's his name? Bahari and Nandi. Those are the last 2 that are living on this island. So that's pretty much, what is it, Shaw, Spinnaker, Maya, and then that couple that were still living on the island. Now, this is when they notice that a boat has came, a big research-sized vessel has came, and that is Richard and Lucas. So they know, and it turns out that Emma and Richard used to date a long, long time ago. People run in the same circles, so I suppose that oceanic engineers and scientists are going to probably meet other oceanic engineers and scientists, and so it's not common, it's common for people who work in the same profession to end up finding partners in and or around their same professions. So that's not like a big thing for, one ocean researcher to have been involved with another one. So he ends up like showing up there, and Richard used to date her. He ends up telling her about the bull sharks, that there's 3 man-eating bull sharks that had attacked, that they had been tracking from rivers, coastal rivers, where they had killed a bunch of people, and that they had been hired to come and find these bull sharks, and he had traced them to there. Which is a lie, of course. But that's what he tells her. And so they agree to help get these sharks. Ask for help capturing them. Doesn't tell her about the genetic modifications or anything like that. And now remember, we're not talking about the first movie, from the second, the intelligence genetic thing that Carlton had been doing. So he admits that, now he's working for that corporation, and she kind of sees that as a sellout, but, so Emma and the 3, it was like Emma went with 2 of their team and 1 of hers, and she goes down there to try to, let's see if these bull sharks are there. Now, but Richard had told her, stay out of the fucking water, while we kind of figure out our plan. But she goes ahead and gets a couple of his guys and 1 of hers to go down there and check things out, because he's leaving the stuff out, right? So she probably wouldn't have done that had she known the truth about things. She just thinks it's 3 rogue bull sharks, that are in the area. So they go diving to check out the nursery and everything. And while she's down there, she comes over the rim of the trough, and down there in this little feeding valley, she sees like a bunch of dead great whites, like fully grown great whites, fresh kills. They've been ripped to shreds, and that scares the hell out of her, and she instantly knows something is up, for them to kill other sharks like that. So he had told her to stay out of the water, because he shows up behind her, scares the shit out of her, and they start like, we've got to, he's like, we've got to get out of here now. And she's like, but these sharks, what the hell's going on? Big, dead, full-grown great whites was killed by what? So they start trying to get out, and a bull shark is coming. And this was a really good scene, because they're trying to get out the water. Because remember, well, you can't remember because I didn't tell you, but I'll tell you now. Maya and them are, of course, monitoring them with this big, they've got ultrasonic radar and everywhere around this whole area, so she can watch all of the blips, all of the action on this big monitor up there at the research center. So Maya has like a radiator and said that there was a bull shark in the area. Get out, right? So her and Rich are trying to get out of there, and then one of his team, it was Brown, they're looking for him, right? They're like, well, let's go. We've already got the other guy. Where's Brown at, right? So they look and right there in the distance, and then they see, I guess they're called rovers. I don't know what they're called. The little things that you can hold on to and lead you through the water. So he's holding on to one of them and coming straight for them. So it's a head-on shot. And they're like, oh, there he is, So as he gets closer, they're relieved, and they're like, I found him, let's go. And instead, he really doesn't make any movement. And as he comes by them, there's only half of him. From his belly button down is gone, so his guts are hanging out and flowing behind him. And then it shows the look on his face. That was fucked up. That was like a really good scene. If I didn't say so at the beginning, this movie is like a big step up. I mean, it's not like the first one, the original, but I gave that one like a 5.5. I gave this one like a 7.2. I mean, this movie is a huge step up in effects, kills, production value. It obviously had a lot bigger budget than number 2 did. So I don't know how they managed that, but they did. I guess they got a rich investor or something. But this is a hugely better movie than number 2. Even though I like 2 fine, this is really good. This is a really good one. That scene where he comes by holding that rover and float, and just, I imagine his hand was like death gripped onto it. So who knows when, I guess when the thing runs out of battery or whatever it'll stop. But he's just gone out into the ocean, half of him on this thing. So that was pretty cool. Now when she gets up there, of course, she is extremely pissed. She is also extremely, what the fuck is going on? At which time Richard admits the truth to her. And tells her not quite all, but tells her that, some more shit's going on. So Lance, his number 2, Richard's number 2, their team tries it again. They're going to go down to try to find these sharks again. At which point Emma gets Spinnaker. She calls him Spin. So Emma gets Spin to he's told me some shit, but lie to me once, and I'm not going to believe your shit the second time. So she gets Spinner, who's like a communications expert. She gets him to can you take the GPS? Because he's still got the GPS he took out of her brain from her tags and stuff. Can you trace it back? Show me where it came from. So he's busy doing that, and who is it? They find the bull down there. A bull comes after them, and they make it back to, this atoll has got a lagoon part, So they're tracking the bull. There's a bull shark after them. Lance manages to get back. Richard. Yeah, Richard. Richard manages to get back, and she's trying to get him out because she's gotten up. The bull shark comes after him, and he tries to shoot it with a knockout thing. But he misses. It like just dodges out of the way because it's that smart. And it comes at him, and right as it gets him, she shoots it with a knockout dart. So she then jumps into the water and goes down there, and he is like in its mouth, like it's got its mouth on him. So he's in its mouth, but it's knocked out on the seafloor. She manages to get it open and get him out and rescue him. Now, of course, they've got one of the sharks. So they take it and they put it on the ship. Him and Lance and Schill is the other guy. Because Brown is dead, right? So he's half fish food and the other half is just floating through the ocean on a rover with his bottom half missing. So, so they get it. She saves him. Now Bahari, you know that the couple that was living on the atoll, they don't know any, they know about the three sharks that this ship has come to look for, but they don't know anything else, like how dangerous they are or anything. So Bahari is out fishing when his hook gets stuck on the nets. He goes into the water to get that. Here comes Bull. He's gone. So Bahari gets killed, and they don't show him get killed because they're going to show you later. So when he's not out there on the boat anymore and she notices, Emma and all of them come running. They go out there and they get his boat and they bring it back. So, and this is his wife, right? So she's like pulling up the net from the boat, and then the net has got like pieces of him in it, like his arm bitten off and body parts and stuff like that. So that was good. And that was a pretty bad thing for her to have to go through. I felt sorry for her. So pieces of Bahari are in it. That's when Spinnaker then tells her that he had managed to track, and that it came from, that the GPS led back. The GPS was activated at the Aquilius Research Facility. That was the research facility from Deep Blue Sea 2. So she was like, oh, I heard about that. Didn't that place sink? And it's like, yeah. And this is where you got the only mention of the original movie. That Carlton guy, and that was, she said, Carlton, the runner of the Aquilius facility, he had bought the rights to what research was left from the original Deep Blue Sea. So I guess maybe stuff that was at headquarters, So that Carlton guy in part 2, he had bought the research, and then he had switched it up. It wasn't about Alzheimer's anymore. It was his crazy idea about AI. But he was the billionaire who had bought the research, which they considered useless now that facility had been destroyed in the first movie. That's where the connection with this storyline, which is these two films, and the first storyline is just that. He bought the research. That's what gave him the idea. He decided to use bull sharks instead of makos. He had genetically engineered them using the research from the very first movie. So the original Deep Blue Sea is connected to these two in only that way. Its research was bought by this millionaire. our billionaire, who had then tailored what little research there was. He had tailored it to his personal plan. So that's the connection between these two movies. So now we have Richard has been caught in that lie about saying that the sharks had come from the river and it attacked people. Now she knows it was actually from that destroyed facility. So she confronts him about it. And while she's confronting him about it, remember, he's shown her the bull shark. Remember, they got the one that was knocked out? So it's up there on the top of the ship being kept wet and watered, and it's got the breathing thing in its gills. And so they're down there. And, you know, when this happens, when he admits, when she confronts him about it not being from the river, but it was from that facility, when the sharks themselves, the other two sharks, they start attacking the boat, trying to bust the windows out, and they are going to bust the windows out. It's starting to crack and stuff like that. It's not going to be as easy as a deep water research because there's not enough pressure. But just by sheer force, even though it's only a few feet under the water, what would it be, like 10 feet under the water? But they're still going to knock it out, right? Now, when he had told her that stuff about how, okay, you got me, you know, that's not true. They didn't come from there. I was hired by that company to get the shark. So, I mean, they don't want the sharks left out there. They want them back alive. At least one of them, and then you can kill the other two. But at least one, because this company, you know, corporations, of course. So, he sort of admits the full truth now. And that Lance guy, he hears him also admitting this truth. That was shit he didn't know either. So, Richard was the only one that knew. So this tight little team of 4 that he had come with, those 3 guys didn't know. So now Lance is really pissed at his friend Brown being killed when he didn't know what the actual mission was. So there's where he kind of, lost it, and turned against Richard. So she's like, I've never seen sharks doing these things that these sharks are doing. And why are they trying to attack the boat? What's the purpose? Rich says, I know what the purpose is. They want their brother back. So she's like, what? And he runs up there because now he knows what to do. So he runs up there on the top of the ship, right? And there they are down there trying to bust through those windows to sink the boat to get their fucking brother. And he takes the big spear gun with an explosive cap and he puts up against that shark's head. They're out there in the water. And he's like, and she's like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, they'll know what I'm doing. And sure enough, those bull sharks like see what he's doing. And they stop. And they turn around and run, take off. Everybody saw that. Her team on the atoll, his other men, they also, so everybody knows now that this is fucked up, that these sharks are something else. And, she's like, what did you do to these things? Because that shark recognized not only what you were doing, but the threat, and turned around and walked off rather than have you hurt their brother. this is a shark. You know. So he tells her the complete rest of the truth. And that was their genetic engineering and the purpose and all of that kind of stuff. That he knows that they are too smart to catch. But he has an ace card. And that's when he explains to her about that GPS device. Remember from the second movie that the guy would mash? Well, here's where we get that explained. When those babies were born, Bella, the mom, she had that tracking device which gives off a sonar signal. Those babies bonded to that signal, which was in her brain. You know, it was in her brain. And he's got it. Just like the one in the first one did. This is their mother. Despite them knowing that their mother is dead, they cannot resist this thing that they bonded to as babies. This sonar. This thing. So he's got a new idea. That since he has the mom's GPS imprinted beacon that was on the babies, they can't resist it. And so he is going to use it to trap them, to trick them, to kill them, whatever he needs to do. Because he only needs that boy. He doesn't need the other two. And three, one is a lot less dangerous than three. So why not do that? Now, of course, she is furious, slaps the fuck out of him, as you can imagine, getting them into all of this. And of course, Lucas is really upset because he's sort of losing his mind because he got his friend killed. He's down here on this mission that he didn't know what it really was. And so he ended up going and calling and telling his bosses, who basically told him, well, you don't find out until later. But he starts acting really strange and he ends up in a fight with Lance or with Richard and actually forces him to give him the GPS controller. So he takes it from him, and it's like, I'm the boss now after what you did. Lying to us, getting Brown killed, having us in the water with these fucking genetic monsters that you made. So he took that from him, and it's like, I'm the boss now. We're going to do this my way. He, of course, didn't know that Lance had talked to the big boys, corporate. So he's going to use the beacon to kill the other two, regardless of what Richard wants. So Spin and Shaw are watching them on the monitor because Richard is not in control anymore. So Lance has taken them and took the other two guys, and they went down into the nursery, into the trench. But Shaw and Spinnaker are watching them on the monitors, and they recognize what they have, and that is two things. They have that GPS, and they have a mine, the kind of mine that you blow the bottom of ships out with. So they had went and drilled it into the nursery wall, and they had placed a mine there and then put the GPS thing on it. Obviously their plan, which they could figure out very easily by seeing this, once Richard and Emma were told, they knew, okay, this is what's going to happen. They want to get those two sharks into that trench. And when that mine goes off, everything in that trench is going to be killed because the sound waves are going to bounce between the walls of that canyon and turn everything. It'll be like a blender. You know what I mean? If you understand how sound works in the water, that's how tsunamis happen. You know, so the concussion is going to bounce off the walls because of the way they placed it and destroy everything in that trench. So that's their plan. Along with that, you know, he confronts Lucas, who has now went even crazier because he starts shooting the atoll buildings and causing explosions, which is going to make this whole place go down. And even if he's upset about this plan that he's come up with to kill the other two, why is he doing this, though? This has nothing to do. Well, I'm sure you can figure that out. You know what corporate told him to do, don't you? So they end up having a big fight. He beats the shit out of Richard. There's a fair amount of like ass kicking in this movie as well. So he starts sinking the atoll with explosives, and that he admits right there during that fight that him and the other two, because they're just as pissed that their buddy got killed, so, and that they're in this shit. So he admits right there in front of Emma and in front of the guys beating his ass, Rich, that he's going to clean up the mess that's been made here by this shit. So basically, I'm going to sink this place. I'm going to kill all these motherfuckers. You can either be on board with it, or you can stay here and die with them. But either way, corporate says clean up the mess. Okay. So Shaw and Emma need to rescue Spinnaker and defuse the mine, because Spinnaker was over there with Maya. Was that her name? Maya? Yeah. When one of the buildings collapsed. So, and Shaw, of course, has been dodging. I mean, the dude is like sitting on the dock where his ship is, blowing up the buildings because he's going to, send this place down. And he wants them all dead too. So Shaw and Emma managed to duck, weave, bob, duck, and weave, and they end up like getting together, and it's like, these are the two things we've got to do. One, they're back on the ship. They're going to take off. They're going to sink us, because when that bomb goes off, when that mine goes off, it's going to be like a tsunami. So not only has he started the place to go down, but this explosion is going to kill them all anyway. And there's nowhere for them to go. There's nothing they can do about it. So there's two things they got to do. One, our two friends are over there in collapsing buildings. And two, that mine's going to kill us all anyway. Now, she is, of course, the expert at swimming and stuff. So she's going to go do that while he goes and tries to rescue Spinnaker and that girl. So she goes and dives after the mine. And Lucas, he had told the guy out there on the boat, he's like, right before he does that, Emma and them are sitting there watching them. And Richard, Lucas, and the other two in the team, the other guy in the team, they are sitting out there, and he is like looking over there at them. And Richard figures out what he's up to. And it's like, I'm not doing this. And he's like, yeah, you are doing this. This leads to one of the coolest scenes in the movie. And that is, he said, look, you can either come with us, because we're gone. It's done. They're going down. The bomb's fisting to go. I got it right here in my hand. Or you can go and stay with them. Well, Richard, he turns around, and it's the Samuel L. Jackson moment of this movie, because he's like, you know what? You're a dick. And I tell you what, the truth is, I would rather die with them than be like you and do this. So he turns around and gets on the end of the boat to dive in and go over there where Emma and Shaw and all them are. So when he says that in his dramatic, I'm going to be with them, he dives off that boat. And it looks like it's about 20 feet. So he dives off that boat, and one of them bull sharks jumps right up out of the water like a fucking orca. And he basically dives right into the bull shark's mouth. And they show it from the side, you know, and he screams like, who wouldn't? But he screams because he's like diving into the water. Here comes this bull shark. He screams and like dives right into its mouth. And that was good, you know, because I can remember like going, holy shit, let me rewind that. That was good. I did not see that coming. Excellent kill. Filmed great. Wonderful special effects, because you know that shit had to be CGI. But that was very good. Like I said, this movie had a lot bigger budget than the second one did. So Emma and them, of course, had to witness that, right? So she has a breakdown, and then that's when we pick back up. She goes down to take care of the mine, while he goes to try to find Spinnaker and that guy. Now that Richard's dead, Lance turns around to that other guy, and he's like, okay, I got business to take care of. I'm going to the back. What he did was he got off. Him and that guy came a little later, got off so they couldn't see, and went back to the atoll, swam around to the atoll. Why the bull sharks didn't get them, I don't know. Did they take a boat or something? I don't know how they got back over there. I doubt they would have gotten to the water. They probably took a little schooner or something. A dinghy. But either way, he ends up, when Shaw is like, you know, getting him, going over there to help Spinnaker and that girl try to rescue them, he ends up like stepping out from behind a building and it's like, hi there, how you doing? It's time to turn this movie, for just a moment, it's time to turn this movie into a fucking kickboxing, martial arts, beat the fuck out of you movie, which they do. So him and Shaw start beating the fuck out of each other. He beats Shaw up pretty bad because Shaw is a lot older than him. He beats the fuck out of him, tells his buddy, I'm going back to the boat. And he had sent another guy after Emma, tells this guy to finish him off, make sure the others are dead, and come back to the boat. So he goes over there and starts whipping his ass too. When Shaw jumps up, they start fighting. And here comes one of the bulls, right? And it was a fantastic scene too, because you know how, I know I did when the kids were like babies, you lay on your back and you put your feet up in the air and you put the baby on your feet, like the airplane ride, you know? You hold the baby up on your feet. He did that to that other guy because he saw that shark coming. So he held the guy up on the end of his feet. And that bull shark just came by, jumped up out of the water, and bit his head off and went on. So I was like, that was cool too. So Shaw basically fed that guy's head. You know, the shark just kind of like went by and said, thank you for the snack, and went on. Meanwhile, the other dude, Shill, he's attacking Emma because she's gotten to the mine. She has taken the GPS thing off of the mine, put it on herself, turned it off and put it on herself, and then managed to get she's trying to get the mine off the wall. Because since they were made to hook to the bottom of a ship, they had drilled in a metal plate. Oh, I'm hiccuping now. They had put it into a metal plate. They had drilled in a metal plate and stuck the mine onto it. So that's not easily going to come off. So she's trying to get it off when that other guy, Shill, attacks her. So they're fighting in the water. She's got the butcher on her. She's a pretty bad bitch, you know. And so they're fighting in the water, and she manages to stab him a couple of times. And all of a sudden, and I may not have mentioned it, back at the beginning of the movie when they were introducing these characters and they were introducing you to Emma, Shaw had gotten pissed at her because she scared the hell out of him when this big old great white mama came up behind him, scared the shit out of him. And it turns out that she knew her. She had a name, Sally. And, she's like, calm down. I know her. She knows me. Yeah, she's bumping up against me. She's just reminding me who the hell she is and who I am. You know, I'm just a little human down here in her world. So you had been introduced to Sally, this great white. Well, when Emma is fighting with Shill over that mine, Sally comes along and eats his ass up. You know, one, she had stabbed him a couple of times, so he was bleeding. But two, her and Sally were like pet. Who was the pet and who was the owner is that question here. I think that's what she meant at the beginning of the movie when she said to Shaw that she's just reminding me who she is and who I am. So I think that maybe it was Emma that was the pet of Sally. And her pet was being attacked. So Sally ate his ass. And that's how Emma got away. So she gets away with the mine, and boom, there's those two bull sharks right on her ass. So she turns around, and she's like, look what I got. So these bull sharks are like, maybe I want to eat you, maybe not. I don't know. Okay, bitch, you got a standoff here. So she had them at a standoff, and she's swimming backwards, holding this mine, and they know what that mine is. So they're smart, you know, and they don't really know exactly what they want to do about the situation, but they're hanging tight with her, and she's holding them off with that. So she uses it to hold off the two bulls. Lucas has the detonator and is leaving. You know, he has no idea that both of his little teammates have been killed, but either way they haven't come back, and he's about through with this shit. So he's going to turn the boat around and take off. So the bulls, or she gets them to come into the to come into the cove. And Shaw uses his body to distract the bull because, he's beaten up, number one. And also he had that guy's head bitten off. So he uses that dead guy with that dead headless guy. And that was a pretty gross scene too, because he needed more blood. So he was pushing on the body to get the blood to come out the stump of his neck. And he put it down into the water to get the bull sharks off of Emma, who comes after that body and tears it to pieces and eats it. So he's trying to help her up, and then she's like, you go see if, make sure. And he's like, I think Spinnaker is, I think they're dead. She's like, well, you go check that because I'm sorry, I can't get up. You're not going to like it. I'm not going to tell you, but I got something to do. She goes back down into the water. Now, I thought, I bet she's going to go put that mine on that ship. And that's exactly what she did. So I'm glad she listened to me. But, so she goes and does that while he then continues to try to find Spinnaker. And now we get to see Spinnaker and Maya. And that was pretty... I jumped a couple of times during that because, that shark wants them bad. And they managed to get away from the shark a couple of times with some jump scares. And then they're up on this higher deck. And just about the time, what was it that happened? Oh, he had gotten skinned the first time, which was a nice jump scare for me. The shark nearly got him, but had just did nothing but nick him with one tooth on his leg. And she was like, oh my God, you're bleeding. And he's like, oh yeah, that was close, wasn't it? And sure enough, probably because I liked him, he comes up and eats him right in front of Maya. So I'm like, well, that sucked, didn't it? I mean, it was expected, of course. I expected that to happen, but it still sucks. Now, about that time, Shaw's still trying to get to them. He doesn't know Spin's gone. And then the building collapses on top of Maya. And so he gives up. And I considered her dead. But since they didn't show it, though, I kind of thought, because he sees the bull shark go off. So I was like him. I assumed that she was dead. So now that isn't going to happen, Lucas comes out. He does see them. He's moving the boat the other direction. He comes out and he holds up the detonator and he looks at him and he sees that it's that, the couple. What was her name? Bandy. So he sees Bandy and Emma and Shaw, and he holds up that detonator, and he's like, well, y'all are fucked. Because, and then he mashes the detonator, and they're watching as, oops, he blew up his own ship. The whole fucking back end of that boat is blown out. And it sinks pretty quickly. This wasn't like a little crack in the hull. You know what I mean? That mine was a ship sinking mine, and it sunk that ship pretty quick. So you see the sharks rescue their brother. Release the brother once to sink the boat sunk, which was their whole intention. So Emma, Sean, and Nandy, they can leave. However, she refuses. She's like, we can't do that. You saw what they did to those great whites. And we're the only three that know about this. We cannot let those sharks live. So she still has that beacon. Because, Shaw, of course, is like, the fuck you think we're going to do? Wonder Woman and Captain America, we are not standing here, And she's like, I've got the beacon. So she said, we're not going to go after them. I'm going to turn this on and they're going to come back to us. So she turns it back on, and of course they do come. So she rigged it up to where she put it on this little robot looking rover, and she was like, I can control the remote control rover, and I can just keep them following it around the cove while you shoot them with the explosive capped things and kill them. So that's her plan. Now, the beacon gets stuck, though. The little rover gets stuck in a net, and Shaw gets in there. He jumps in to free it, manages to get it free, but he doesn't get out in time because now he's got two sharks tag teaming him. You know, like one's there and one's there. Whichever way you want to do it, they're doing that to him. So he ain't going nowhere. And he's, of course, wearing the suit, and he's got the explosive caps and the tranquilizing caps. So that he had taken off that asshole that he got his head to eat off. So he had the explosive caps, and he's like, what you do? You know, he was dead, and he knew it. And so he sacrificed himself, because when those two sharks came at him, he took two of those explosive caps out and held them in his hand, sort of like that, you know. He held them in his hand, and when those two sharks got up to him, right as they started to eat his ass, he on both of their heads and blew both of them and his own ass up. So you're like, well, that was bloody and unfortunate for him. So he took two of them out, which was very brave of him. And he sacrifices himself by blowing up himself and the two sharks, so there's one left. Now, Lucas, whom you thought was dead, he fucking shows back up. And he's not looking pretty. And he's not feeling pretty. He's pretty pissed off. You know, burn spots on him. He's not a happy fella. And he starts beating the shit out of Emma. And that's actually a good fight. I think I wrote that. Yeah, good fight. So, Lucas showed back up, starts beating the shit out of her. She gets in some good licks too, but it's really good. It's a good fight. It's not really what I expected to see in a shark movie, was a couple of really good action fights. So, she ends up like stabbing him in the chest. I know that like when the fight first started, and he pulled out this big fucking bayonet looking thing and started slicing at her. He sliced her across the abdomen. He sliced her across the arm. It was a pretty... Not only do I not expect to see cool fight scenes like that in a shark movie, and it didn't distract from the shark movie at all. It just added a couple of minutes of really intense action-oriented ass beating, which, I thought that was pretty cool myself. But like when the fight first started and he sliced her up, that looked ugly. I mean, that was a brutal fight between them two. And he's a big old boy. Of course, he was probably neutered a little bit from just having his ass blown up out there on the ship, but he was still beating her ass, and she was beating his a little bit. So Emma's all bloody and stuff, and after she stabs him, because she ends up stabbing him like, pretty much like right here in the chest. But since he's a big old boy and pissed off, that doesn't like completely stop him. So she ends up like It's like sticking out of him, and she two-hand puts it through his ass. So she adds a little hammer hit with her fist. So he dies. He had no choice this time. So she's, of course, bloody from being cut up. The place is still slowly sinking. There's the last big giant bull shark. And she doesn't know what to do except to go, wait a second. She sees the cargo. It's like a cargo hold. What did I call it? A cargo container, like on a train or something. But it's got electric doors, and she saw that it was still hooked up. So she goes, it's hanging half in the water. So she's like, come up with the idea, and I thought, what's she gonna do? I honestly couldn't figure out the idea. You may have figured it out, but I didn't. And I'm like, what is she doing? So she's leading that shark. She goes into that container because there's a door on the other end. Once she gets it in there, that shark comes right in there after her. And it's squeezing its way in there, getting closer and closer to her. When she gets to the door and opening the door, and I'm like, I don't really see the purpose of what she's doing until that door opened. Now, when she got that door open, on the outside of that door was a button to close the doors. Where the shark's head is trying to get to her. So she manages to get her arm out there and push that button, and then the doors clamp on the shark's head. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't feel bad. I'm not a sea expert or a oceanic researcher, so I mean, how would I have known what you were doing? So I didn't feel bad about not knowing, but I got it then. And I'm like, oh, I see. Okay, well, that's a good idea. Except he's awful close to you because she can't get out. That door is braced up against the pier. There's enough room for her to get her arm out and mash that button, but there's not enough room for her to get out. So I'm like, I don't know. What's the point here? Wait for it to drown? Or are you just going to like crush it till its head comes off? So some shit happens and she loses control of the button and it gets even closer to her. She manages to get her hand back out there. It's a very intense, intense scene. She gets her hand back on the button, and so that fucking shark gets like that. And it is ugly. Because it's got its mouth fully open, and then its big teeth, how their jaws come out of their mouth. This is like a fucking alien. Like a xenomorph. Open the mouth and another mouth comes out. Well, even though sharks don't do it that far, that is the way their mouths work. They open their mouths and their gums like extend. But especially that breed, the bull shark. But it was like literally 5-6 inches from her face when the door managed to make its head implode or explode, and brains and blood and shark parts went everywhere, and then she was basically able to swim, because its tail end fell off because it had no head no more. It was all blown up. So her plot worked. It was pretty good, and she managed to get the door closed at the last second, which blew its head up. And then her and Nandy left on the boat. And as they're like, sort of like the final scene in Jaws, where the two, where Sheriff Brody and Richard Dreyfuss are like floating off on the. It's the same kind of scene, except they're on a boat and they're going, and then they come up next to a cabinet, like a big giant cupboard that was floating from the island, and because the island's like half sunk now, and then that's when I was like, wait a second, isn't that looks like the cupboard that that was right by Spinnaker when he got aid, that the other girl, Maya, that she was sitting on top of. And sure enough, when they got up to it and they opened it, she jumped up with a butcher knife. And so that's how she was alive. She had gotten into that cupboard when the building fell down and it went and popped up. And she had been floating away but too scared to open the door. Which I can relate to that. And then that's how the movie ended. So there was a lot of really good scenes in this movie. The special effects were really good. And like I said, I don't see how they could make a fourth one, though. Because I remember when it ended, the first thing that I thought was, I'd like to see more of this storyline. But unlike the first movie, which left it ambiguous, the second movie intentionally left it open. You saw the sharks alive attacking that beach. So, this one though, there was only 3 left. We know one of them was a boy. They were only juveniles. I'm not expert enough to answer the questions about sharks. Could they have impregnated one of each other? I know one of them was a boy, but were all 3 of them boys? Were the other 2 girls? Was there even a girl? Could they have mated with someone else? I don't know. When do sharks mate? They're not like humans. They don't just go out and find someone. They have breeding season and stuff like that. Of course, now that they've had their intelligence increased, he may have known to go and get somebody. So I don't know. But the point is, I liked this movie. And I think it was a great shark movie, especially this one. I think the second one is too. They make a really good trilogy. As long as you understand from the beginning that 2 and 3 have nothing to do with number 1 other than that one line saying that the guy from number 2 bought the research from that company and then reworked it and made a whole new project. So I like the way that they enabled the continuation of it. I don't see how they could do it after this, though. It would have to be another reboot because there was only 3 sharks and they were killed completely. So, but that's why it got a 7.2 from me out of 10, is because even though that's the reason. If you finish a movie and you say, I'd like a sequel, then you must have liked that movie. And I would have liked to see that storyline continue. It was fun. Deep Blue Sea 3 was a lot funner than I thought it was going to be. 2 wasn't near as bad as people made it out to be to me. So, yeah, it's great. I liked it. And that is Deep Blue Sea 3. And that is the Deep Blue Sea trilogy. Don't be afraid of it. If you haven't seen it, don't be afraid of it. It's all right, especially 3. 3 is really, really good. I really liked it. Great story, great action, good special effects. The fake shark, because of course it was fake, the bro that they were keeping on the ship that the others wanted to get off, he looked phenomenal up close. I mean, that looked like a real shark. So, and it was not. So yeah, that was really good. And they used a lot of real shark footage in this one, and the CGI, like the two bulls, and the close-up scenes, it was a good 7 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10 CGI. The CGI was really good. You couldn't really tell any difference. So like I said, they must have, I don't know, I guess I could check International Movie Database and see what the budget was on both of them. A lot of times they don't show you the budget, but all I know is that this one seemed to have, either they did a lot more with the budget they had, or they had a lot more budget. So yeah, that's Deep Blue 3C, Deep Blue Sea Tree, and I will see you in the next one. We'll continue Shark Week. Love you, miss you. Bye. Always remember, never forget, you are a very wonderful and special person. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Keep rocking very, very hard. Like hard enough to make Metallica jealous or Love Bites jealous. And keep screaming, but only when appropriate. Don't be afraid of this trilogy. 2 is a little cheap and a little derivative from the first one. But there's enough extra in there to make it a decent little, popcorn shark movie. This one, however, is really, really good. I think you would really enjoy Deep Blue 3C. Deep Blue C3. And I will see you in the next one. Because I better get the fuck off of here, right? Love you, miss you. Bye-bye. See you in the next one when I will be doing... Did I really talk for an hour on Deep Blue C3? Is that for real? Wow. Oops.